Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships, where as promised I'm going to have a look at the Shinano through the lens of operations. This thing is only the second carrier in game to get improved accuracy secondaries along with the Graf Zeppelins, but it is for its tier not nearly as effective with those secondaries. These of course have got the German HE penetration, and while in theory there are some Japanese secondary guns, or even just guns that have very good penetration, like you find on the Sukuryu for example, on the Shinano you instead have a paltry 4 turrets per side of the 127 mils, and of course this being a CV with CV captain skills you don't get any equivalent of IFHE. You can however get a pretty decent range of 11 kilometers. You can actually do that with the Sukuryu as well with its 100 mils, which I've messed around with this as a secondary setup. It's definitely not optimal, but in operations at least, I mean, the secondaries do put in some work. If they had the improved secondary accuracy, I think actually Sukuryu could be quite fun in ops with those secondaries, but as it is now, we've got the Shinano instead with its fewer 127mm guns, so they're not totally useless. They will do something, and I'm going to take it into ops with this setup. But the other unique feature, and I think it is unique to this ship, is that the tactical squadron, its HE bombers, start loaded from the very beginning of a match. Every other tactical ship, and feel free to correct me, I might be wrong about this, I don't have every carrier that has tactical squadrons, but all the ones that I do have, you have to wait for them to load. Whereas with the Shinano, not only is it a fairly quick cooldown, but you start with them right away. And oh, you can drop smoke with them too. So obviously if you're going to be messing around with secondaries, well, that's quite useful. So let's hit the battle button and see what we get. There are some other features with this as well in terms of its armor plating and its bow and stern armor. Its extremities are 27mm, and that is better than I think all other carriers. They all tend to be very squashy in terms of their extremity plating, although some of them do have very, very tough armoured decks, and I don't know if Shinano falls into that category exactly. I forgot to look at what the deck armour was, but stuff's mostly going to be firing at your sides at the ranges that you're talking about in ops anyway, so to be honest, the extremity armour doesn't seem to factor into it all that much. It's also got a fair whack less hit points than the Yamato and Musashi as well. So yeah, this is about what you'd expect for a high tier carrier. Anyway, we do have an op going here with Raptor Rescue where we'll actually get to use some of the secondaries, because sometimes you don't. There are ops where a carrier with secondaries are just kind of redundant, at which point you're only really using the planes, which are still pretty decent. You don't have a huge number of reserves, but it does, I think I remember reading, have an increased base plane reload, refresh time rather, and of course you've got the tactical squadrons going as well, so there might be a bit of a cooldown, but you've got a decent mix of planes with what you've got. And I found you might start running low, but it's hard to truly run out of planes. So there we go, decent hits. The torp bombers do some decent damage. The skip bombers against cruisers are particularly effective. They're not particularly good against battleships, I've found. And then there's the HE bombers, and if you do manage a good meaty hit, they are kind of useful. Maybe on a par with the is it the Hornet that gets the B-25s? Can't remember exactly, but you can do some fairly decent damage with those, and you can do some fairly decent damage with ships with these as well if you've got a nice fat target. The downside, I mean, this is a downside with basically most carriers in Ops. I would say Tier 6 carriers in Ops, fairly useless. Tier 8 carriers can be okay so long as you are with other Tier 8s. If you get into a match with Tier 9s, then you're a bit stuffed, because at that point the jump in AA power renders them fairly useless. And honestly, I think Wargaming could stand to tweak Ops a bit, so that the AA power of the ships you're facing, if there's a CV involved, it scales to match what that CV is in the same way that the hit points scale based on what there is in terms of the opponents that the bots are facing. So that's definitely something that could happen to make CVs a bit more relevant in operations generally. There's not many CVs I would recommend taking into Ops. Some of them are just flat out useless. At least some of the ones with weaker planes like Kaga, you have fairly endless reserves to throw around at things. But there are others like the British CVs where it's really, really easy to neuter them, because of course in operations you're facing big clusters of AA. Right, there's stuff down to the south there, so let's maybe go with our attack bombers again. So yeah, even some of the tier 10s and the super carriers can struggle in operations quite badly, just because you've got that big bump in AA power that you're facing, and it does tend to be these clusters of ships. So yeah, Shinano, just having these bombers that are immediately available, that is a leg up on basically all of the other high tier carriers. It's a pretty useful feature to have, and the fact that you can smoke yourself and allies temporarily is just a real nice bonus. So let's see if we're going to drop on the Azuma, and that looks good. That wasn't too bad. 12k, okay. Let's get the, seeing as how these are cruisers, let's get the skip bombers up. Let's see if we can't do something with those. Hopefully that Schlieffen can get themselves repaired. We're looking decent as a group so far. This isn't always the case when you're playing like some ops. You'll get people doing very odd things which ends up being counterproductive, like 6 of 7 players going after the carrier to the south, and it's like, okay, well, now we're all doomed. Anyway, that it wasn't quite as good, only one. That probably wasn't an optimal drop, but I'm not that great with the skip bombers, because especially when you start getting all the flat clouds pushing up, it can get, honestly, sort of tricky to determine the best drop point, and I guess that just comes with experience. Anyway, these ships are getting kind of pounded, which is nice. And the escort destroyer has put out smoke, so there's no point trying to go after the CV just now. I might go for some smoke bombers. It kind of depends what's there, because if it's like a Kitakaze or a Harugamo or something, let's just make that drop, that's fine. That, with the CV's, the enemy CV's AA power can kind of render you a little bit useless. But we'll see. And of course there's the Azuma there as well. Alright, the Annapolis needs to fall back, which it looks like they are doing. We'll see if we can provide some spotting for our allies at least. Right, that was some destroyer pew-pews, I think. Let's drop down the fighter, there we go. Crew, you spotted. Here's the boost, and we'll have to use the heal as well. Right, what are you? You're a Kitakaze. Okay, that's annoying. We'll have to drop what feels like way too early, but hopefully won't be. Still weird seeing a Bogue. After all this time, it's like a relic of the distant past. 2 hits, that's not bad considering that was a distinctly suboptimal drop. So we got that spawn to the north. Yeah, let's go for our smoke bombers. I don't know why I said smoke bombers. I'm not going to use the smoke just now, but actually I could, you know, I could help out this Annapolis. Try and keep them in the fight a bit longer. The smoke doesn't last particularly long, but you know, sometimes it's better than nothing. So 60 seconds. I mean, it is literally better than nothing. It could be a lot worse. Ooh, that's not nice. Who's shooting at me? Right, this is not optimal as a target, but let's have a go anyway, and let's see if we manage to get anything. 1 hit. Oh well. Okay. Another reason the armour doesn't work that well is because even battleships will tend to switch to HE to fire at you in operations. Well, that's going to be actually kind of awkward. Do you have the Azuma coming up on the other side? Man, if this had the 100mm secondaries, it would be so much easier to just be super enthusiastic about them, even if it had fewer than the Sukuryu, but oh well, the 127s still work fine against something like a destroyer. Right, we might be in a position where we can actually see something, get a clear shot at something with planes. It looks like the Azuma's coming around this way. We know where the Kitakaze is. See if we can get that Yoshino. You do have the heal on both your regular squadrons, so that's quite a nice feature. Should be about there, that should be fine. We'll just immediately call those back. Oh yes, a nice tasty 21k. We'll focus, time to focus that Kitakaze, that's the biggest threat right now. Well, that and Yoshino having torpedoes as well. Don't know if we have anyone with their hydro up right now. Oh, ouch, bit of a pain. See what I mean? The extra extremity armour and the fact that this is technically a Yamato hull, although I think it does have less belt. It's one of the things they would have done is strip off the belt armour, or some of the belt armour. Yeah, it doesn't really count for that much when you're facing the things that you face in high tier ops. Right, not doing too bad, but we do need to stick with the healing. God, this thing is just... It sort of illustrates what a chonker of a carrier this is compared to the smaller, more purpose-built things. Well, this was never intended as a carrier. I mean, for those that don't know, this was basically after the somewhat disastrous matchups against the Americans in the mid to late stages of the war, they suddenly decided they need more carriers rather than another Yamato class, because something about all of theirs being sunk. And unlike the US, you had, and to a lesser extent the Royal Navy, you had the shipyard capacity to build more. Japan really did not. They were sort of relying on building up beforehand and then winning through decisive battles, which is precisely what the Allied navies mostly managed to avoid doing. Right, I am really not sitting on a lot of health right now, and we've also slightly run down on planes for the time being. We do still have everybody left alive, although the Schlieffen has been on perpetually low health for a while now. Well, I can say much, I'm on pretty terrible health as well. Oh, can we get this drop, or is this just going to be a wipe? No, that's... 4 high tier cruisers all clustered together is kind of a tough proposition. Oh well, we're just going to let our planes regen a little bit then, I think. Right, let's have another go. They're splitting up now slightly. Even with everything I've said about tier 10 carriers struggling and super carriers struggling in a lot of ops, I think this is still among the better of them. Even if you took the secondaries out of the equation, I think this would still... Oh, no, that completely missed, but never mind. Going down anyway. Yeah. Like, in this situation, heck, the Graf Zeppelin would honestly be more useful just with its secondaries. Completely useless in terms of its planes, but just in terms of its secondaries it would have done a whole bunch more. And especially as the Germans and, of course now, the Pan-American line get special captains that you can drop in that have got secondary related skills. There is no secondary Japanese captain, so that is another way in which this kind of is still a little bit inferior in that regard to the Graf Zepp. The only real way in which it beats the Graf Zepp is just in sheer extra range. The 1.5 kilometers between, what was it, 9.5 and 11, it does make a big difference. Right, so we've got a bomber squadron left. I think we're due another couple of cruiser spawns up here. Honestly can't remember. That Schlieffen's looking mighty low health, but we still haven't lost anyone. So let's get these planes in the air. 150k, not spectacular. We might get to do a little bit more. But it's certainly not completely awful. So there we go. Literally caught them spawning in. Oh, this is going to be a very awkward cross drop. Well, we might be able to more or less line it up. Just even turning that way, which is useful. Nearly 9k, I'll take it. So, set ourselves on the auto course. The exit, because might as well. Might even be able to get another hit in for those torps reach. Actually, you know what, let's go for the Clausewitz. And let's see if we can't... Ooh. Anyone who's an actual carrier player is probably face palming at the amount I swing my planes around. There we go, got the kill. Okay, right, autopilot, still a bit hinky. Wasn't actually trying to run into the island at low speed, but apparently the autopilot thought I was, so there we go. Not that it really matters that much. Nothing can sneak in some torpedo hits before this Yoshino gets sunk. Probably not. No, oh well. Well, not bad. We've lost one ship. Everyone was paying attention, doing the things they needed to do, which is always nice when you're recording and not dealing with having to face palm at people who, I don't know, sometimes you get people in their tier 10s or tier 11s and they must have played a few battles to get there, but even in ops they still don't seem to quite grasp what's going on or what they're supposed to be doing. Even when it's literally laid out for you, and in a lot of the operations there isn't even really any variation to grapple with. This is one of the few where there's still any significant amount of variation. So there we go, all 5, 180k damage. We can have a quick look at the breakdown, and about 70k of that was combined fires and secondaries. Of course, not all the fires were set by my secondaries. All the fires and floodings as well, but not a lot from the flooding. Yeah, it would have been extra fires compared to if I was just using my planes. So all in all, not terrible, but yeah, CVs tend to not be able to do enough damage, even the better ones, to end up high on the ranking list. Especially when you've got battleships and cruisers that are doing like 300 or 400k, depending on how things shake out. So I'll give Shinano another go, and then I might actually take another one of the tier 10 CVs or the super CVs just for comparison, just to see how that stacks up at tier 10. Because you don't see a lot of people talking about CVs and ops specifically, so, you know, I thought I might as well. So this time round Newport, we might get some work out of our secondaries, but probably not nearly as much. It's not as good a secondary operation. I mean, you've also got the fact that when you're playing your Graf Zepp, you've got access to a wider pool of operations, whereas of course with the high tier ones, that pool is currently restricted. So let's set ourselves going forwards. What I like to do if I'm playing a carrier that has secondaries is park myself around about here, and then you can divert either this way or this way depending on where the spawns happen. And you can get unlucky and everything decides to shoot you, in which case you might sink very quickly, but generally speaking that's not going to happen. So you can lend your firepower against the hard to hit oncoming destroyers, which are a particular pain to deal with sometimes. This is one of those ops where if you've got the smaller caliber guns, bigger caliber guns you can still overmatch and do nasty things to the oncoming ships, but the smaller caliber guns you may be struggling a bit. And then you've got the destroyers, which are just kind of hard to hit at that angle anyway. Oh, right into the flak as I was setting up for the drop. That's a bit unfortunate. Not a lot of damage there. Let's go for the skip bombers this time. They were a little underused last time, perhaps. Honestly, if they ever do a Japanese secondary focused ship, I hope it has lots of 100 mils. That would be very, very nice. But knowing wargaming, they'd probably like do something weird, like a, I don't know, hypothetical Mutsu refit or something. Who knows? Right, we're struggling with the angle here because we're coming down over the island. We're actually going to have to make a direct drop, which didn't do a huge amount, but never mind. So as the secondary's opening up, well, they're not going to do a huge amount of damage here just because it's not fantastic angles and you just don't have many of them. Also, this Schlieffen parked in the way is mildly annoying. Right, do I want to get more planes up? I guess so. In preparation for whatever the next spawn's going to be. That side, okay. Elbing Kitakaze. Kitakaze is going to be annoying, but never mind. Hopefully that Schlieffen moves out of my way so I can... Looks like he's backing up in that direction. So basically I just kind of want to go like this, And then you can loop round behind one of the islands when they start getting closer. So that's my vague plan. The other one that would have been that's good for carriers particularly. Well, there's Hermes actually. Hermes, when you've got stuff coming from both sides, can be good for your secondaries. Although that one's definitely tougher in terms of actually doing damage with your planes. Did my bombs all miss? That's a bit of a shame. But the one where you're attacking a base, is it Killer Whale? I think it's Killer Whale. You can have some fun with a secondary carrier in that one. But sadly that's not on the high tier list. I do quite like getting Killer Whale when I'm in the Graf Zeppelin. Okay, the Elbing has smoked up. I actually might go for the Elbing just because it's at the edge. And get a chance to drop without going full whack into everybody's AA. These torpedo bombers are not bad in terms of... no, never mind. In terms of... like, they don't need a huge long lead up, which some of the Japanese torpedo bombers do. Can I think we'll just go for the old one. I don't think we can get around that Kitakazi's AA at the moment, so definitely not the efficient target to go for with these planes, but never mind. And it's dead. Okay, let's go for the Brindisi next. Also got my secondaries opening up, which is nice. I do sort of a little bit miss the old days when it was a unified set of captain skills across all classes. Like the way it is now does have a lot of advantages for players. And even just playing that bit of World of Tanks I did over the holidays made me remember how much I prefer how things are done in World of Warships. But yeah, the unified set of captain skills did at least have the advantage of you could do wacky things, like have IFHE on your carrier's secondary guns. And these days it's dependent on Wargaming deciding if they're going to put a particular skill in place for each class of ship. And really there is only that one secondary skill for carriers, and it's very, very niche use case. Like this and the Graf Zeps are the only... Oh no, apparently I dropped that way too early. This and the Graf Zeps are the only carriers I would use that for. There is otherwise not a lot of point to it. I don't know, maybe they could buff it as a combined skill. Well, we could back up a little bit here. Nice, there we go. When I'm not completely whiffing my shots with the torpedoes, they do quite nicely. Right, so we're back to a group of cruisers and destroyers, which is going to be a bit of a pain, so we'll try and pick on this rune at the edge here. This side, you know, avoiding the Harugamo, that's going to be preferable anyway. So yeah, let's see if we can get this rune. I'm actually not going to use most of my bombers in the process. That's looking decent. Slightly skew if drop, but still 11.6k damage. I will take it. I'm basically useless at carriers in like actual random matches, to be honest. The only reason I've played through a lot of the carrier lines is just to see how they do in operations. So all of my CV skills are entirely operations based, but I suppose that gives me a somewhat unique perspective. Do I have see what the time is. I'm gonna make a guess. Oh no, that was a bit too long. Right, if we pop a heel, can we get the Hindenburg? No, never mind. I just got shredded. Right, focus and concentrate on that destroyer. Without the rockets, you do have the slight disadvantage, I suppose, of basically only having the torpedoes to combat destroyers with, which is a trickier proposition. But if you've played the German CVs, that's kind of meant to be your primary anti-destroyer weapon anyway. Right, let's see if we can get this Hunger now. Here it is. Ooh, doing nasty things to my planes. I might have enough. Right, he's slowed down, but I still got one. Just the Harugumo alone, without all the rest of them, we can actually make another drop. Right, you slow right down. I should be able to get 2, if not 3 hits there. No, it's turning away. 2 hits. No, 3 hits. There we go. But because of damage saturation, that was not enough for the kill, sadly. Anyway, it looks like we're going to get all of these ships killed before the timer. Yeah, there we go. That's triggered, and that's triggered. So that is fantastic. So we can go basically forwards again, and then set it so that we're going round behind the island. Well, let's get planes over here in readiness for them spawning. Get the Des Moines helping us as well. So again, this is all going according to plan, which is very nice. That's not always the case. Right, Venezia, Clausewitz. Let's go for the Venezia because it's the closest. Not particularly narrow drop there, but still a couple of hits. Starting to get a bit low on our regular squadrons. There might be some skills with what's his face, Yamamoto, that help with air squadrons. I can't remember. I think I've already got him set up with his carrier skills for something else. Right, only 2 of my bombers got through there, sadly. It's enough for 10k damage though, I'll take it. Get some secondary hits in there as well. It probably wouldn't be historical at all, but man, I wish this thing had the 100 mils. It's funny, they have the potential to be truly hilarious secondary guns in terms of their pen and their reload, but it's just not worth doing it on any ship, really, where they feature as secondary guns, apart from maybe the Sukuru. I don't know, should that be a ship I take? That did absolutely nothing. That was terrible RNG. Oh well. I'm wondering if I should take that maybe as the example carrier, but no, we'll play something like Midway maybe, just for a little bit of difference. Or maybe the Immelmann, which does have weaker planes overall. Did I set my Immelmann up for secondaries also? I can't remember. I might have done, just to be silly. Right, we're sort of falling back on relying on our tactical squadrons at this point. We have burned a lot of planes. We do still have our secondaries at play, so that's absolutely fine. I don't quite have the time to move up for a lovely neat drop, so I managed to get all three away, but oh no, they were slightly too close. Grr. Oh well. Right, you focus on the Elbit, please. That'll be the Piemonte's torpedoes. Piemonte, of course, being Italian for Pie Mountain. Yep, that's definitely real. I'm a linguistic expert. I should know these things. I definitely do know these things. And you can trust me, and I would never, ever say a ridiculous thing in a video just because it amused me to. So, there you go. I must be telling the truth. Pie Mountain. Honestly, I've said that, somebody in the comments is going to pop up and go, well, actually, there is this real place that's called Pie Mountain, because places end up with all kinds of ridiculous names for completely ridiculous reasons. There is an entire US state named after the supposed fact that Queen Elizabeth I was a virgin queen, so there you go. Don't know if it gets too much more ridiculous than that, but it probably can. Right, so Satsuma's almost in secondary range, so we can just keep our secondaries pew-pewing. There's a lot of our damage at this point is just purely being done by the secondaries. That placement is fine, that's fine. Bit of an early drop. And he's actually gonna... yeah, not particularly tight grouping. Anyway, we've done absolutely fine though in terms of this group of players. Everyone's performed their roles more than adequately, and it's been a nice easy round as a result. Almost 200k this time. We've actually beaten what we did last time. Right, this is going to be another over the island completely rubbish direct drop that didn't even hit or do anything, so never mind. Yeah, let's focus the secondaries on the Clausewitz. Actually, there's another one of the... yeah, I've seen a couple of the Prince van Oranjes around. I have been a bit curious about that myself and wondered maybe if I shouldn't have gotten that instead, as it is one of the ships that I think I'm right in saying they haven't actually given us a clear idea of how it might be available or when it might next be available after the Steel Ships event. Right, this is only a Yugamo. Did get into a bit of flak there though, but that's still most of my planes alive and well. Not a great result, however. I don't actually think I'm going to get... oh, it's a Hirugamo, not a Yugamo. The names are so smushed together that I couldn't actually... oh well. Anyway, denied a chance for a few more secondary hits, but still we had over 400 in that one, so not too shabby. So there we are, 209k damage, and again, in fact this was even better this time in terms of just the raw damage output, 80k. So yeah, that's just a bonus 80k damage, and however much of the fire damage came from the secondary setting fires. So they have a place, they have a use, they do give you something. It's just if they were the 100 mils of the Sukuryu, they would give you so much more. Anyway, so yeah, I said I'd take another ship, and I'm not entirely sure which one I'm going to take. See, I have set up the Ilman, and you can get a maximum of 10.4 kilometers for the Ilman, but I could maybe also take something like the Malta, just to demonstrate that yeah, being a high tier carrier doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be any good. So yeah, let's take the Malta then. And we do have Andrew Cunningham, who gives us, I think, some bonuses. Aircraft prep time, squadron speed, and he also has a bonus to AA damage reduction. So in theory, the planes ought to be a little bit more survivable and a bit faster. So yeah, let's give Malta a go. Not set up for secondaries at all. This is more just a sort of, I don't know, completely non-scientific control test to show you what a comparison of how a non-secondary or a weaker tier 10 carrier can perform in operations. So once again, new port, no tactical squadrons this time, no turbo secondaries. We do have, I think, the same number of secondary guns, but I believe so this is the unmodified. I think this is without the signals even, 5 kilometers. So I think the best you could get these up to in terms of the secondary range would probably not even be 10 kilometers. Probably be less than that. In fact, I'm sure it would be less than that. I haven't even looked to see what the I haven't even thought of trying to set up something like the Malta as a secondary ship, because there wouldn't be a point. There really wouldn't be. It'd be like trying to have a secondary Soviet battleship. Although you just wait, it'll get to the point at someday where wargaming will go, right, we've run out of all the other ideas, let's do a secondary Soviet battleship, because why not? Anyway, let's see how we could do. I might have to do some safety drops just to limit or slow down the loss of aircraft. I'm also going to be a bit rusty with this thing, as I don't exactly play it very much. I can't even remember how Malta was available. Is it a coal ship? I've got a big stack of coal at this point, and literally the only thing to spend it on is the U-2501, so I've not bothered. It's a ship I could get for free, and I am disinterested enough in submarines that I just am like, yeah, okay. I could, but I'm not going to. Right. Decent hit, 16k, got a flooding. I don't know why I'm following the same plan here, actually. I really don't need to. Gets me a bit closer to the enemy, I suppose, with launching. But yeah, I think we'll cancel our forward motion. Because if stuff gets within 5 kilometers of my completely unimproved secondaries, at that point I'm probably in some kind of trouble anyway. Let's try reversing a bit. Right, go back to torpedoes. I could have launched the AP bombers actually. Oh, I was actually going to say that's another advantage of the HE bombers on the Shinano, is that there are select operations where having HE bombers to hit shoreside targets with, as opposed to AP bombers, especially if you've only got AP bombers and no HE rockets, which is a combination some carriers have. That's particularly problematic. It means, like Cherry Blossom is probably the worst example, where at least if you've got some kind of HE capable plane, you can go in and hit the airfield targets a bit early, especially the one on the western side. The one on the eastern side, ships with sufficient range can actually start to hit that from fairly early on, but the one on the western side, you need to get right round that corner. Unless you have some HE capable planes to throw at it, and the fact that the Shinano's planes as well are, that the HE bombers are a tactical squadron, is particularly useful for Cherry Blossom. Right, no heal on these planes here, so there we go. That was about 10k, not totally terrible. I would be surprised if I managed to take a break 200k damage with this ship, but you never know, I might surprise myself. I suspect I will have more of a problem running low. Although I was running low with the Shinano as well, but I was still able to dish out some damage with the secondaries and the tank squadrons. And of course, a lot of carriers, you don't get that little extra something, which is another reason why a lot of carriers are not particularly useful for operations. And once you run out of planes, which you might do very quickly, you're kind of just useless. You're a floating hunk of hit points. I almost said a floating flunk of hit points there because my brain is marvellous. Yeah, you're just a floating hunk of hit points for the bots to shoot at, and you can't really contribute anything from that point forwards. Whereas if you've got the secondaries or the tank squadrons, which the Shinano has both, you can at least still do something. Well, let's do the drop them and turn inwards. Hit that Brindisi. Hopefully I mean, the Hayate, sometimes you get destroyers that position themselves a bit forwards and it's a bit dicey, but they look like they've put themselves in a position where, yes, they can actually make a getaway if they need to. Let's hit this Imagi. Get a bit of damage out of it before it goes down. I want to... It might die before I get there. It's annoying sometimes, you're racing towards the target and you get there just in time to take a bunch of flak damage and then it gets sunk by your allies, so the whole thing turns out to be a bit pointless. Well, let's see if we can't do something to one of these cruisers instead. Probably should have done the safety drop, but never mind, it's too late, we're committed now. Pop. Not a lot of damage, but the armor-piercing bomblets are a bit weird. They're a bit of a weird thing. You're never going to get the hits that you get with a German larger AP bombs. Or even the... I swear there's at least one Japanese carrier with AP bombs. Or am I making that up? I can't remember. I mean, the British bomblets are a bit weird and occasionally quite useless anyway, but they can at least be used as a fire-setting tool. With some of the British carriers, you have to, especially the tier 8s, you basically have to concentrate not on doing damage with the planes, but trying to set fires that stick. And play it almost as a flying HE fire-spitting cruiser. Let's try torpedoes. I'm sort of slightly running out of things to say at this point, so there might be some longer gaps. Well, not from your point of view, of course. I shall do fancy editing tricks, by which I mean very basic editing tricks, and snip some pieces out, but yeah. It's I've kind of said what I needed to say about the Shinano, although I suppose there is that it's kind of interesting that we finally got the Shinano itself in game. I think it was on people's wish lists for a very long time, but there's not a lot known about it. There's very, very few photographs. It's one of those ships that basically the Allies kind of vaguely knew it existed, and with the immediate end of war, literal bonfire of records, that the Japanese undertook. But there wasn't a lot left. So, ooh, can I get there? Can I get there? No, okay, let's just call those back. Right, the Hayate has really pushed up. The Shimmy's out there as well now, so if there's more spawns in the middle, we might lose those. Anyway, there goes the L-Bing. Starting to struggle for planes a little bit. 53k damage, it's not exactly spectacular. Especially given the main damage dealing squadrons are these two, and the AP bomblets are just kind of, I don't know, comedy afterthought really. Can't even set fires with them. Right, let's see if we can nail this Venezia. That should be just about right in terms of distance. There we go. Decent hits. At least should break 100k damage, but that's not a lot in high tier operations. It's really not. This is why a lot of CVs, if you do see a CV, they might not, like they tend not to have very good scores, but at least some CVs in some operations you can still be useful and spot things. I might get to sneak the kill here. There's no point sailing over Venezia's A8. No, didn't even get that to get the Clausewitz. Oh well. I guess we'll stick with trying to hammer that Clausewitz. Hayate still somehow hanging on. Lost half their health. I guess they were far enough away from anything with strong hydro that they were able to just smoke up and pew a bit. Yeah, kind of bucked my predictions there. A lot of destroyers pushing out like that does not end well. But if you know what you're doing, you know where the spawns are going to be, I suppose. 3 hits, not awful. Let's go for the Piemonte. Let's see if we can't climb Pie Mountain. Yes. That's definitely really what that means. Now I want pie. I've said that so many times that actually I could go for a nice savoury pie, like a steak and kidney pie. I haven't had a good steak and kidney pie in quite a long time. I used to live in, like there was a couple of years where I lived in Staffordshire, and it's kind of more or less the British Midlands, and it's known for its, like British cuisine is renowned as being quite stodgy and beige, and a lot of that comes from I think sort of the middle and north of England in particular, where a lot of it was, you know, stick it in a pie and serve it with the mashed potatoes. It's kind of the height of cuisine. As opposed to the far more in like Scottish cuisine, of course, where we stick it in batter and serve it with little rectangles. What would the proper name for the shape be? Anyway, serve it with chips, different kind of potatoes. Batter it and fry it, and it's the height of Scottish cuisine, as we all know. That looks good. I don't think I'm reaching 200k somehow. I'm definitely struggling to rack up the damage here. We've only managed to land 2 fires as well, and like it's kind of rare that you get more floods than fires actually. But maybe that's because I've landed more torpedo hits in terms of the numbers of strikes that I've made. That was barely anything, but at least stuck a fire on the Piemonte. Looks like he's gonna go down. We're gonna go for this drop anyway because it's closer. Nope, never mind. We'll lose that period of relative in Unity to reposition for the Preußen. No, the cooldown was too long. Never mind. Thought we could get that there in time, but alas. You know what? I should just drive forwards. We should put those almighty secondary guns to use. The, what was it, 113 mil, 4.2 inch weird caliber that the British used. Gonna get a little more damage against the Preußen at least.
Autopilot disabled.
Only a very little.
Autopilot enabled.
Can we get round there in time? Do we have a tight enough turning circle? Not sure. So yeah, doing a consistent amount of damage was kind of a struggle. Although I did pick, I think, a particularly weak example in terms of carriers that you don't want to take into opposite high tiers. Something like the Midway might have done a bit better. Oh, that was finally a good hit! Good grief, okay. RNG blessed me that time. No, okay, there we go. Not a single secondary ribbon. Clearly I was playing that all wrong. Right, it was a struggle to get that 150k. But we did once again get all of the objectives, so that was quite nice. And bottom of the team. Oh well. Not that far off being bottom of the team, but still. It's about what you'd expect to see for that performance. So yeah, CVs, generally, I don't recommend taking them into operations, but there are some examples that defy that trend. And honestly, I think Shinano is one of them. And it probably is worth setting up for secondaries if you're going to take it into operations. But if you really, really want something that you want to practice your CV skills with in ops, the Graf Zeppelin is still absolutely the king. And yeah, that's the one I would recommend the most, just because it's got those lovely German secondaries, it's got quite a lot of them, and you can pair it with a captain that will actually enhance those quite nicely, turning it into a bit of a death-spewing machine for anything that gets close enough, especially if it's a destroyer or something that's very weakly armoured. Once Lutyens' secondary skill kicks in, it is just like pew 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 pew. It's constant. It's hilarious. The secondaries on this thing do so much damage, and I'm sure I have done a Graf Zeppelin operations video in the past, so you can probably go check that out if you are truly interested. Anyway, apparently my voice is slightly starting to go, so I think I should wrap this up. It's also been like an hour recording time. So yeah, hopefully you have found this video interesting. And if you have, you can do all the usual things down underneath it. And of course, as always, stay tuned for more.